I'm Tom Place, this is Chasing Cars, and this is the 5th generation Volkswagen Caddy Crewvan. Now you might have seen that Ponch did a review on the People Mover variant of the 5th generation Caddy, which is more of a lifestyle focused 7-seater van. But what you probably know the Caddy more so for is being a stripped out, compact little van that has a surprising amount of space inside, and that continues to be offered in the short and long wheelbase variants for this generation. However, what we've got here is kind of a cross between those two vehicles. It seats 5 and it's got plenty of room in the back, which is great if you're a small business owner that needs to carry people and things, or if you're just a family who has a lot of stuff, which I understand is all of them. Now, the Crewvan is available in a single grade, but you do get a choice between a petrol and a diesel engine option, and the diesel is what we have here today. It's about $2 more expensive than the petrol, but as we'll discuss later in the video, it's probably the one to go for if you see yourself doing a lot of driving. Now, in today's video, we're going to have a look at the exterior of the Caddy before we jump inside and check out the interior, and then we're going to discuss the running costs before we jump inside and see what the Caddy is like to drive. Now, for just under 46 grand, you might be looking at this array of plastic bumpers and steel wheels and going, wow, that's not really the go. But I actually think that this is a handsome looking car, and those bits in particular kind of suit the personality of it. Now, you might actually look, it's a bit of a sleek front end here, for a van at least. It's got a drag coefficient of 0.3, which according to Volkswagen makes it the most aerodynamic in its class. And I think coming up to the front of here, when you're seeing the plastic bumper, if you've got a young teenager learning to drive or just an apprentice who's not that great of a driver, this plastic bumper is exactly what you want. Now, moving around to the side here, we've got the 17-inch steel wheels, and they look okay considering you're looking at hubcaps. Now, the halogen lights themselves, although they remain halogens, are a little bit brighter than they were before. Now, looking along the side here, I think there's a bit to appreciate because although this is a very rigid form factor, Volkswagen have done their best to give it some shape. You look at the rear wheel arches, and there's kind of a bit of a bulge involved, and then towards the end there, it kind of swoops over a little bit, and you've of course got this nice line running through the middle. Now, right in front of me is probably one of my favorite things about this interior, and that is the leather steering wheel. And not only is it just great in the hand and a, good little size, but it's also just complete with buttons. Mechanical buttons, which are just nice to press, and they're not like the haptic feedback style that Volkswagen has started using now. It's just classic, works, simple, you don't have to look down, and it's just great. Which is good because it's a different story when we look at the center infotainment screen here. It's an 8.25-inch display, which is a pretty decent thing. However, some of the margins are taken up by some buttons and things like that. But the main problem is the fact that this is a just very not responsive. When your touch targets are just not accurate, it's slow. Now, thankfully, compared to the 10-inch screen here, we actually have some volume knobs, which are really great. You can tune your radio and do other stuff through here, which at least adds some sort of tactility that you can do without looking at it. But if you're trying to operate CarPlay, you have to mash things several times, and honestly, it's just really gets on your nerves very quickly. It's a similar story further down where we have the climate control and sort of the driver assist functions here, which you don't have any feedback for, so you don't actually know when you're touching them. You have to be watching that. And also just the fact that you have to control the climate control through a touchscreen, and a touchscreen in particular, which is not responsive, it's just not really that great. So in the center console here, we have 2 USB-C fast charging points, and we have an actual cigarette lighter. And down below we have the shifter, which is more intuitive than, say, a rotary dial. You can still actually move it, and you've got just a normal button for park, and along with an electronic park brake. Moving further down, we have 2 cup holders here, but at the moment we have a little ashtray in here to go along with the cigarette lighter. And of course, we've got the armrest, which is extendable and goes up and down, which is great for suiting different sizes of people. So the seats themselves are manually adjustable, and they do have height adjustment. And my favorite is that they have power lumbar support, 4-way power lumbar support, which really just makes the seats significantly more comfortable on long trips. You can actually get a good posture here, and that's on both the driver and the passenger side, which is a bit of a rarity. So yes, very much appreciated. Now, right in front of me, we've got two analog gauges, which is pretty standard fare, and they really do the job. They're nice and clear, and with the small center screen, you can get things up like your economy and your speed to get more exact details when you need them. Jumping into the back seat now, and I'm actually find myself being in a rather comfortable place to be. I've got a great amount of knee room, and toe room's good too, and headroom is obviously enormous. And under thigh support is pretty good, and of course the seat itself is actually quite comfortable here. So yeah, I could actually see myself spending a bit of time here. One limiting factor is the fact that you can't put the windows down in the van here, which is pretty common for a sliding door van. However, it is a little bit disappointing if you find yourself needing some fresh air. We do have some rear air vents here, and we've got two USB-C charging points underneath. We've also got this nice little tray table here, which is really great, although it's not the strongest, but if you've got kids that are just eating, or you're just going over some paperwork and you want to write something down, it should be reasonably okay. But if you've got a big bulky laptop, I would very much avoid using it for that, because I don't know, it may or may not break. Back here, we've also got two ISOFIX points, and they've got these nice little zip away pockets, so you don't have to look at them if you don't need to. But another sort of great family feature about the back of the Caddy is the fact that the airbags go all the way back to the second row, which is really great for young kids especially, and it's not something you see on all sort of commercial vehicles, which have been a little bit barren in recent memories. So all of this kind of builds onto the point that the Caddy Crewvan is a great little multi-purpose vehicle. You can use it for family and be fairly confident that your kids and other people will be safe back here, but it's also fairly useful. So yeah, very impressed with the second row. One of the cooler things about the second row of the Caddy compared to many SUVs out there is the third seat is actually a proper seat. You can sit right here between two baby seats, admittedly not comfortably, but if I was a smaller human, this would be an okay place to be. Coming around to the back of the Caddy here, we've got this nice tail light design, which I think works quite nice and sort of goes with the rest of it. If you don't like the bumpers, by the way, you can get some painted body color versions of those, but I don't know, I think they work nicely. Of course, we've got the split tailgate design here, although we've got two windows, but only one windscreen wiper. Now, opening the doors like so, we find that there's actually a pretty huge space inside here. It's 1.7 meters cubed if we're looking at it just with the second row in place, but you can actually take out that second row, and at that point it becomes 3.1 meters cubed. One disappointing thing if you're comparing the Crewvan here against the long wheelbase Caddy Cargo is that there actually isn't enough space between here to fit a Euro pallet, because it's 1185 millimeters, whereas the Caddy Cargo Maxi is 1230 millimeters. And that's a little bit disappointing if you're looking for that added versatility. However, the Crewvans are more made for kind of your bits and bobs type material carting around, and you can still fit a Euro pallet that way, but you can't get it in with a forklift, so that's a little bit sort of defeats the point of a pallet, really. Now, one thing you may have noticed is that this cargo cover here only goes part of the way, and if you're a tradie who's got lots of tools and you don't want people peering in through the windows at night and smashing through the windows, then that's not really ideal, and I would have liked to send perhaps like a pool sort of cover situation from that just to cover that up. Now, compared to the Cargo Maxi, there's a bit more, well, there's actually anything here for a start. You've got these nice kind of lined edges, and you've got soundproofing and protection, which is great for blocking out a little bit of noise when you're driving, which we'll get to a little bit later, but it's also hardy and nice wearing, and you're not gonna smash this up with it unless you're giving it a real good effort. And similar continues up through the roof, where we've got some nice soft touch materials to soak up some sounds. And we've also got some speakers here in the rest. There's 6 all up. Another nice little features of this split double doors is you can actually release them like so, in which case you can get them way out the way, so you can just slide stuff straight in. And of course that reveals that huge big space. Now this feels a little bit silly to do with the suitcases, which normally make a challenge for most vehicles, but in this, they're practically drowning. You can easily fit all 3 chasing car suitcases inside the back of the Caddy Crewvan. Now, Volkswagen has capped the price of servicing a Caddy at $2,731. The servicing intervals themselves are every 12 months or 15,000 kilometers. As far as fuel consumption goes, Volkswagen claims 4.9 litres per 100 kilometre, but in our experience that was more around 6.4 litres per 100 kilometre, which is still pretty good for a van of this size. As far as warranty, it's 5 years unlimited kilometres, and importantly, if you're buying this to be used as a commercial vehicle, that warranty is exactly the same. Nothing changes. In the past 12 months, the median budget direct customer paid $899 to comprehensively insure their Volkswagen Caddy. However, everyone's situation is different and your premiums will vary based on things insurers take into consideration, like where you live, how you garage the car, and your driving history, etc. In my week with the Caddy, one thing's really stood out to me, and that's just how approachable the Caddy Crewvan is to drive. It sort of feels like a long hatchback in many respects, you know, like it's even despite the increase in width. If you're someone who's perhaps in a hatchback and you're running a small business and you want something that's got a bit more storage, I wouldn't hesitate into getting into one of these. And another reason for that is Volkswagen's adoption of the MQB platform, which of course underpins the Golf and means that there is actually some dynamic capability in this little van. And while I wouldn't go flogging it around corners at obscene speeds, it does feel confident, inspiring to drive. You don't feel like you're all over the road, and you've got a heavy load in the back that will be even more settled again. Under the bonnet of the Caddy Crewvan is a 2-litre turbo diesel engine making 90 kilowatts and 320 Newton meters, and that's actually a healthy increase of 15 kilowatts and 70 Newton meters over the previous generation, and that's a pretty good increase. Now that's teamed up exclusively to a DSG. In the Crewvan you can get some manuals on other variants, but not the Crewvan, sadly, and all that power goes straight to the front wheels. It's a good pairing because you get a lot of power in the right areas, and in particular I noticed that it's surprisingly sprightly at going up to about 60 kilometers an hour. Another important change for this generation is the decision to go for a coil sprung rear end instead of a leaf sprung rear end. And not only does that make it more comfortable to drive around town, those sharp bumps don't feel quite as sharp, though I won't pretend that this is anything similar to a Golf, but it is pretty good for a commercial vehicle. And importantly, that hasn't come at the cost of payload. It's actually increased in the Crewvan from 720 kilograms to 750 kilograms, which is a good amount of weight to be able to carry around, especially in that small space. I don't really know how you could be getting much into the rear of there anyway, maybe some bricks, I'm not sure. One area that this Caddy Crewvan isn't quite as practical as perhaps a ute is in its towing capacity. Now the diesel does tow more than the petrol. It tows 1,500 kilos compared to 1,400 kilos, but that's still a far sight down on many utes out there that can tow up to 3.5 tons. That's a little bit disappointing, but the fact is this is a small van and that's a controllable weight. Vans like these are more about what you can put in the back and keep it dry, keep it together, and not all over the place. It's not about towing a boat to places on the weekend. Historically, car manufacturers, when it comes to commercial vehicles, have just often forgotten about safety, but that's not so much the case today with commercial vehicles, and the Caddy is a good example of that. We have things like those airbags that go all the way to the second row, which is great. We've got AEB, lane keep assist, but there are some caveats to that. For example, the AEB doesn't have cyclist and pedestrian assist unless you option it on, and the cruise control isn't adaptive, and if you're spending any kind of time in traffic all day, I would definitely do that. I'd really hesitate to use normal cruise control if you're in a congested city. In addition, things like rear cross traffic alert can also be optioned, but it does make you wonder if things like that should come standard on a car that's 46 grand before you add on roads. In general, however, I've found that the Caddy Crewvan has been a great little thing to drive, and that is across highways, cities, and all kinds of different environments. It's just an easy and approachable vehicle to drive, and that's not something you can say for all commercial vehicles. So if you're perhaps a small business owner which is working out of a hatchback at the moment and you want to sort of upgrade to something that's got a bit more luggage space in the back, I wouldn't hesitate at all into jumping in something like this. But in general, I very much enjoyed my time driving the Caddy. So those are my final thoughts on the Volkswagen Caddy Crewvan. Now I think this is a great little van that sort of suits those split purposes where you still need the carrying capacity of 5 seats safely, but also you want that big sort of rear storage to carry lots and lots of stuff. And in some ways, I think that that suits that purpose better than, dual cab utes, which also sort of have that split purpose design. But let me know what you think in the comments down below. But either way, thanks for watching Chasing Cars.